Academica Media. From Academica Media Studios in Miami, Florida, it's Big Ideas in Education, a weekly recap of inspiration and innovation in your schools.
Hello, education lovers. Welcome to the program. Excited as always to have you here on this week's installment of Big Ideas in Education. I'm Ryan Kairalla from Doral College, happily joined by Dr. Sarah Boulos from Somerset Academy Schools. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
And equally pleased to be joined by Michael Hernandez from Academica. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Ryan. Hey, Sarah.
It's great to have you.
This is a joy. My two favorite people to talk education with, and we're hanging out with some great viewers and listeners this week. This is going to be a blast. Sarah, get us started. What story do you have this week?
Well, back to school time is definitely in full swing, and I, for one, can very clearly remember my first year as a classroom teacher at this point in the year. I was full of enthusiasm and passion, and I was so excited about all the things I was going to do in this new position. So I love seeing stories highlighting first-year classroom teachers who are just on fire for teaching and learning. And that's what I saw in Chalkbeat, Philadelphia recently, highlighting Mr. Tamir Harper of Henry C. Lee School in West Philadelphia. Mr. Harper is among 600 new teachers and counselors in the school district. He's not only a teacher, but also a product of that same school system, graduating from the Science Leadership Academy Center City years before. Harper is a part of the movement known as the Black Teacher Pipeline, aimed at recruiting, hiring, and retaining Black teachers across the U.S. The effort is spearheaded by Philadelphia educator Sharif El-Mekki, founder of the Center for Black Educator Development. El-Mekki's mission is to bring 21,000 Black students into the teaching pipeline over the next 12 years in 10 communities across the country, including the Philadelphia-Camden area. And fun fact, if that name sounds familiar, it's because it's not the first time we've mentioned it on the show. Bonus points to anyone listening who catches on that reference. We can come back to that in a sec. It feels amazing to be a part of this movement, Harper said. I feel as though this is the work that needs to be done and the work that will actually change how we look at education. So many of you already know that Philadelphia is pretty near and dear to my heart, but I have to admit that I have also been one of the many people who have fallen in love with a particular TV show highlighting a Philadelphia school, Abbott Elementary.
Oh, wow. They got you too.
Yeah. Have you guys heard of it?
I've been hearing a lot about it lately because they apparently won all the Emmys.
Yeah. So
this week.
It's a great show. So this article actually asks Mr. Harper which character he most connects with, and I won't spoil anything, but so you can click on the link in our show description to read more. But I have to say I'm only a few episodes in, and I find it really fun. I relate a lot to the enthusiasm of the main character, Janine, and her Leslie Knope-esque joie de vivre. And if I'm being honest, so many of the characters on that show echo the experiences that I had as a first-year classroom teacher, complete with incredible veteran teachers who had to take me aside and tell me that if I wanted any chance of making it in this field, I was going to have to be careful not to burn out. So to all of us interacting with these excited puppy first teachers, we need to take some time to remind ourselves how important their energy is and make sure that we nurture and protect them.
I love that story. That is exciting. I love that you are getting into Abbott Elementary. I feel like I'm the last person to have not seen this show.
I have to say, I really recommend it. And I don't know.
I'm
this
a new
isn't
dad.
A
it's on my list, though.
I know, right? This is not a spoiler, but the first couple scenes, I'm watching it, and a character who is a substitute teacher in the first episode, his name's Gregory, I forget the last name, Gregory Eddy, I think is his name. I'm looking at him, I'm like, where is he from? He was Chris in Everybody Hates Chris. I don't know if you guys ever watched that show, Everybody Hates Chris. I loved that show back in the day. So it's a lot of fun, some really incredible actors, and also I know, I think I mentioned it right before the show we started recording. And Ryan, you said you thought it was going to be a completely different kind of show.
Oh yeah. In fact, I would normally a show about a school, like I'm going to be, you'd think I'd be drawn to it as an educator, that I'd want to watch it right when it first came out. But at first I was afraid to get into it because, I knew it was going to be a show about, inner city school. And so I thought, oh, it's going to be something that's dark, maybe a dark comedy, or just, something that was, so many times when Hollywood portrays inner city schools, they make them so much worse and so much more dramatic than what they actually are, which is just a building with a whole bunch of dedicated educators and students doing amazing things. And so I thought that that's what this show was going to be. And then it turns out that it's actually depicts that kind of school really well, and it shines a great light on it, and it's really, really funny. And so now I'm kind of bummed that I missed the show when it first came out. And now I want to get back into it just as soon as I can, get my 2-month-old to, get a more consistent sleep schedule. But
yes.
I mean, apparently it's a feel-good comedy, and I love that.
It is. And I mean, it's not to say that, those darker themes don't happen in our schools. They absolutely do. Nor to say that they're shying away from all of those. I don't know. Like I said, I have not watched the entire series yet. But I do think that there is something to be said about the levity of it's not always doom and gloom, and you got to look for the light in some things. There's also a really excellent moment in one of the first episodes that I saw where there is an older teacher who's been there a while. I think her name's Miss Howard, and they have to make like a wish list. And the younger teacher, Janine, is just she's gung-ho to get the kids everything on this wish list because she's like, these kids don't have this and they don't have that. And there's a really fantastic moment in the episode where Miss Howard says to her, you keep focusing on all the things these kids don't have, and you need to open your eyes to what they do have and what they're bringing to school. And that is so enriching, and it's a message that I personally try to take with me into every interaction with my kids and my teachers, to say, you know what, if I go looking, there's a whole lot of things that are not here, but I need to make sure that I'm not going into this classroom with that deficit mindset, and that I'm bringing my best to these kids and helping them to reach their potential. So it's a heartwarming one for me. There's some moments that it's like there are some characters that are just so ridiculous you have to laugh, because there are ridiculous people like that in our schools, and you just it's nice to just make light of it. So I have to say it's a fun. 2 thumbs up. Highly recommend.
Love it. And in the midst of our love fest for Abbott Elementary, I'd hate to give short shrift to this amazing story of Tamir Harper.
Oh yes,
was chronicled in this article. Because the real exactly
teachers doing this work. Exactly.
It's emblematic of so many cool different phenomena that we've talked about on this program, including a black teacher pipeline, and this one of our favorite things to see in education, which is students within a school system becoming teachers within that system. I love it when we see that in the schools that we work with. That is the best.
And I'm so glad you brought us back around, because when I was reading this article, I saw Sharif El-Mekki's name and I thought, wait a minute, I know him. And if you've been listening to this show, you may have heard his name mentioned before. One, we had the honor of actually meeting him and sharing a stage with him a couple years ago. I say a couple, but who knows, because it was pre-COVID times, right?
It was in the before times. Everything runs together.
But we were honored to share a stage with him at the National Charter School Conference, because he is one of the founders and speakers on the 8 Black Hands podcast. And we've mentioned that show a few times. We were really honored to be able to share a stage with them and learn from them. And I am just so excited that I can say, hey, I know that guy. And that he's doing such incredible things in this mission that he has. And of course, anybody who's heard my history of teacher recruitment and retention knows that this is very near and dear to my heart as well.
Absolutely. To me, just to quickly throw this in here as well, the 2 things that I appreciate the most about these 2 separate pieces of phenomenon that we talk about, whether it's a black teacher pipeline or students within a school system going on and becoming teachers in that same system, is that both of those things can help to serve to correct another thing that we've talked about on this program, which is the unfortunate trend of, in many schools, particularly inner city schools, the diversity of the teaching ranks not matching the diversity of the student body that they're teaching.
Absolutely.
And so one way to do that is to make sure that we are recruiting teachers of color and teachers who often come from the same circumstances of the students they're teaching, so that the students can see themselves within the teaching ranks, which the data show is very important to facilitating learning gains in those schools.
Absolutely. And I think part of it is not just in the recruitment, but the fact, like the mission of what El Mekki is doing here at the Center for Black Educator Development is not just in the recruitment and the hiring, but it's the retention, right? So year after year, we get this influx of energy from these new teachers. They are on fire. They have so many things they want to accomplish. They have a passion. And then, we swiftly stamp it out of them within a few months to a year, right? Because, it's not even a joke, because we know most teachers don't survive that. And teachers of color have an even worse rate of surviving in our school system. So really taking a look at not just what are we doing to bring them in, but what are we doing within our systems to grow them and to make sure that they have fertile ground for a career in this industry, and that we are really taking a look at why our systems are not hospitable to teachers, and specifically teachers of color, after a certain point.
Yep. No question about it. Want to talk about another story that just kind of blew me away this week. I thought it was adorable. With data showing evidence of COVID-related learning losses among elementary grade students and other shifts in procedures that are taking place as schools are returning from the pandemic, teachers often feel like they have to take more control over their day-to-day classroom environment to keep things on track. But as the We Are Teachers blog recently noted, it is important for young students to still get opportunities to have some control over their learning, even in small ways. A recent article identified some ways that to let young students have some influence on the classroom environment while still giving teachers the ability to focus on their students' educational and personal growth. One tried and true and fun way to give young students some control in the classroom is to let the students name their group tables. From the article, quote, "Many elementary classrooms arrange their students' desks in clusters to seat their students at tables. Having students name these groups or teams can be an easy way to build classroom community. Teachers can give parameters to help facilitate the process and add to the fun. For example, you could specify that table names must include a book title and an animal," end quote. Another way to give students some agency over the classroom is to assign classroom jobs. But unlike the traditional method of having the teacher assign students to particular jobs, such as door holder or paper passer, we all remember those from our childhood, the article recommends that students and the teachers should decide together what jobs are necessary to make a classroom run smoothly, and to have the students actually apply for the jobs that they're interested in. And for the teachers who like to send out regular newsletters to their parents, how about having your students help out with it? Quote, "Teachers often spend a great deal of time each week writing newsletters. If you hire a student to report on what the class is learning, you not only save time, but you give the students an opportunity to write purposefully for a real audience. One way to have students report on the goings-on in the classroom is through Google Slides. Students can create a deck with a slide for each subject and to include photos that they take to accompany their writing. After a week or two, the slides can be shared with the class and families at home." And I can tell you, this actually reminds me of an elementary school teacher I had who did something similar to this, where she would write a newsletter to the parents, but as part of our assignments in the class, we were expected to contribute to that newsletter with little essays or photos that the teacher would then send to our parents. And it was a literal newsletter. We had to bring it home to our parents. I love the 21st century version of this, where we can use Google Slides and email to, kind of up the technology again, because I'm guessing a lot of these students are actually in a better position to help the teachers with this, because they probably know this tech better than the teachers do sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. So a lot of things ran through my head while you were talking, but I wanted to let Mike jump in first, because I feel like I've been hogging a little bit of the microphone.
Well, especially because of the tech elements of this, right? I'm sure
Yeah.
Mike might have some cool thoughts and solutions on that part of it.
Well, I mean, I'm thank you for giving me the opportunity to just kind of expand a little on this. I mean, the first thing that kind of comes to mind, and Ryan, you're gonna laugh, is I just, this really gives me echoes of a certain model that we experienced and we supported way back, the Sudbury model. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I get
If
interesting
if we're not
patterns.
familiar with Sudbury, could you tell us what that is?
Oof, the Sudbury model. So the Sudbury model is based on, and Ryan, please jump in at any point if I'm misspeaking here. It's basically where the students take full full autonomy of the classroom, and they have things like a joint committee. They vote on certain roles that are given to students. They also decide when and how they should learn certain, certain criteria, which is based, it's a much more dynamic model when it comes to learning. But when it comes down to what I see in terms of similarities, it's just about truly giving the student agency, right?
Yeah, that
Um,
agency piece, right?
and that's the thing that really, when Ryan was speaking about this, I was thinking, huh. I remember this JC committee and how there was a 10-year-old who provided me an entire IT inventory request list.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
As somebody who
Yeah.
helps with inventory, I would like to hire that 10-year-old.
And like, being completely candid, I saw it, and it was written by a 10-year-old, right? But at the same time, there was substance there. There's a spark of thought that one can actually start molding into. And I just
Yeah.
really like this idea here, because if you start giving, it's incredible how much we think, kids in elementary, they're just not ready. But in reality, if you just give them the chance to, they would really just surprise us. And I'll just dive real quick into the technology piece that you mentioned there, since that is my background. I love the Google Slides aspect. I also love the fact that now, especially with the platform that we're using for this, I believe it's called StreamYard. There's tons of streaming platforms where you don't even really need like a high powered computer. And I could really see students actually taking this to the next level, where they start doing maybe some sort of TV production. I really miss TV production and morning news in
Yeah.
Oh,
schools.
yeah.
I thought that was such a great piece. I know that's kind of fallen a little by the wayside, but I think that should start coming back in shapes and forms and through streaming. That to me is one thing I think would be really cool to see students start using this model, and really, moving forward with that, right? It
They
goes
could
back
do
to what you
like a
said.
daily recap or a weekly recap type thing, and yeah, that's really
It,
cool.
daily, weekly recap. You can also keep your student body informed of all sorts of events and all sorts of upcoming things. It could really be a great delivery piece for all sorts of communication. And you just really start rounding out these kids into being able to be self automated, and to really start pushing themselves to really thinking about different ideas.
You said
Yeah.
something, Mike, that I want to kind of jump on. And you said
Hmm.
how when we're working, especially when we're working with elementary students, that there's this misconception that maybe they're not ready. And I really want to take that back to almost what I was saying about the lessons learned, right, as a first year teacher, about deficit mindset. And so I kind of want to push back just a hair on the article that you presented, because I kept hearing a certain word. And I have to be honest, that word kind of raises the little hairs on the back of my neck as a teacher. And that word is control.
Okay.
The word control, I think, is thrown around a lot, and I don't think it's done maliciously, but I think it's very telling about some schools of thought when it comes to education and educators. And so if my goal as the teacher is to control the classroom, there is some assumption I'm making about my students that I would really have a problem with, right? And so if I'm a teacher coming into the classroom with the assumption that my children are bringing incredible talents and mindsets and perspectives and culture and experiences, and I want to help them tap into this larger world of academia and education to help, use those talents and experiences to the best of their ability, then my job should not be to control the classroom, right? But to bring about structures and procedures that are going to help us to communicate better with each other. And it might sound semantic, but I think that mindset changes a lot of behavior from school leaders, teachers, paraprofessionals, every adult in the building. If I see my job as controlling behavior, then I don't think my job is educating. I don't think my job is teaching. I don't think my job is bringing experiences in front of children so that they can manipulate and learn through play, through study, through experiences, through experimentation. And I think that it's a broader conversation that needs to happen, that when we talk about controlling kids, we are automatically bringing a deficit mindset into the classroom. So I'd love for us, as we go into the school year, to try to think about the way that we conceptualize behavior management in the class as one that is more open to talking, communication, shared experience, shared respect for each other, right? What kinds of expectations do we have for this class so that, if I'm the one who is speaking, I actually had this conversation with some kindergartners, which if you've never been in an elementary school, kindergartners in the first week of school, that's a big one. But I had a conversation with some kindergartners and we talked about what does it mean to be a speaker and what does it mean to be a listener, right? And I wasn't trying to control the room at that point. I was trying to help them see when you're playing with your friends and when you're on the playground, if you have something to say, do you want them to talk over you or do you want them to listen to you? So how do we identify who the speaker is at that time, show them respect, and show that we want to be a good friend and a good listener so that we can have an awesome time here in school? Because what do you want to do here in school? They talked about they wanted to play, they wanted to learn, and they wanted to be a good friend. That's what the kindergartners came up with. Play, learn, be a good friend. Am I being a good friend if I talk while you're trying to talk? No. That's very different from controlling my class by saying, raise your hand and wait to be called on. I'll get off my soapbox there.
It's very profound, and certainly, that's a system I would endorse, but it does sort of necessitate something of a paradigm shift with a lot of the ways that we, teach how to teach, or just in the general kind of conventional means, like even the very lexicon of education, like the phrase classroom management, sort of conveys this idea of top-down authority where, you are controlling the students and trying to manage them, as opposed to something that's more collaborative where you convey to students the why of why we have rules and norms and procedures instead of just the because I said so method. It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah,
I'll just add one more thing to your point about specifically control. I'm a firm believer that any elementary student has an incredible craving to learn. I truly believe that. I just think that every child as well has their own path of getting to that satisfaction of that craving, right? Not everyone is built the same, but I've never met a child who has not wanted to learn something or was inspired to start learning something. So going back to control, if you take away their voice and you just make it top down, this is you're killing their drive. Really,
you are. And there's that
happening.
Famous TED talk about how kids come into kindergarten with all this creativity, and by the next couple years, it's diminished. Like it goes from 96% to I don't know if I'm being dramatic, but I think it's something like single digits of creativity and excitement that they bring to the classroom. So it's interesting how it all came together, but as usual, we don't plan these stories to coalesce or to align this way, but I don't know. I saw a lot of connection there.
I'm hearing a common thread. Let's not do things that tamp down either the enthusiasm of first-year teachers or first-year students.
Or any students.
Or any students for that matter.
Teachers.
Or any teachers for that matter. Love to
Right.
get your perspective on this, viewers and listeners. Please tweet at us at Academica Media with the hashtag BigIdeasInEducation. Let us know what you think about our stories this week, and we'll have some great ones for you next week. Mike, Sarah, always a pleasure hanging out with you.
Great being here. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
The views expressed on the preceding program have been those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Academica, its clients, staff, affiliates, or advertisers.